building a home can be a dream for many families, but for some people, that dream turned into a nightmare when they started the process. And the source of that nightmare was the builder. So how do you know which builders to use and which builders to avoid? Stick around and find out. What's up, everyone? It's Jeff with Jeff West Properties, your host for the Conroe Living Channel, where we identify and celebrate everything that makes Conroe, Texas, one of the fastest growing cities in America and one of the best places in the nation to live. Do a quick Google search and you will find no shortage of home building nightmares, both for individual homes and sometimes for full neighborhoods. If you're thinking of building a home and you read an article like that, you may be tempted just to call the whole thing off. But at the very least, most people after reading that article would say, yeah, I'm definitely not going to work with that builder. So how do you know who to avoid? I could just make this a really quick video and say, don't use this company, that company, or this company. But I want to take a different and more thorough approach. Have you ever had a friend or family member that shared an experience with you where they went to a restaurant and they found a hair in their soup or a fingernail in their salad or a family of badgers living under their table, like something that made the experience not good? And because of that, you decided you're never going to go to that restaurant? That happens because not all opinions are created equal. Human nature says that if someone we know and trust tells us something, that's going to be a default opinion that we're going to share as well. But you know, that's not always a good thing. That restaurant may have a 4.9-star review and everybody else loves it, but because of your friend's bad experience, you'll never try it and you may miss out on a great dining opportunity. That same thing happens to builders. I have yet to see a builder who doesn't have at least one negative review. And if somebody puts a review online of a bad experience that they had, that one bad experience can affect several people's decisions on whether or not to use a builder or not. And those people can feel justified because they researched the company. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and they just know they're right because they did their research, and the research was they watched one YouTube article or talked to a person who said, "Trust me, bro." When you're making a decision about who's going to build your house, something that you're going to have a mortgage on for the next 30 years, at the very least, it requires pretty thorough investigation of the company that you're going to work with. So here's my advice to you. Read the reviews and read as many of them as you can get your hand on. Read them thoroughly. Also, it's important to note that if you read reviews on a company's website, they're not going to tell you much because usually they're only picking and choosing the best ones that highlight their company. Another thing is you may do a Google search and find an article on a website that has nothing but good things to say as well about that company. Guess what? It's not that difficult for a company to create a new website and call it something like truthadvisor.com or trustmebro.com. And it could be that same company just putting more positive reviews out there. So the best places to go to look for reviews are places like Google My Business, because that's different than people's actual websites, Consumer Reports, Yelp, and the Better Business Bureau. Now keep in mind that when you go to these sites, most of the reviews are going to be more negative than positive. That's just human nature. If somebody has a good experience, they're not necessarily going to go online to sing the praises of that company. But if someone has a bad experience, they want everyone in the world to know about it. What you should really be looking for is themes. Are several people saying the exact same thing? Are they citing the same problem? Because if that's the case, that could be an indication that this is true. One thing that's good about using the Better Business Bureau is the company actually has the ability to go in and answer the complaints, either to remedy them or to respond to them. If you find a company that goes and looks at the reviews and shares feedback, shows sympathy, or remediates the problem that people have, most of the time you can feel like that's a pretty good and reputable company. But if you find someone who goes on there just to argue with all the people who have their complaints, or even worse, someone who doesn't respond whatsoever because they can, that's pretty much a red flag. If I see a company that has more negative reviews than any of the competition, and I see a company that has the same problem over and over again, and I see a company that Better Business Bureau has complaints on that they don't respond at all, or they just go on there to argue with people, I'm pretty much going to avoid that company. Now, having said all this, I read a lot of reviews on builders. I try to stay as up to date as I can on other people's complaints, people's opinions of builders, so I'm not just trusting my own experience or my client's own experience. And one of the things that I've noticed with constant complaints is sometimes there are things that are just beyond the builder's control. One of the most important parts of my job when I'm working with new build clients is to help them manage their expectations from the beginning. If you go directly to a model home and you speak just with a sales consultant, they're going to share all of the great things about building a home. And there are a ton of great things to love about building a home, but they're probably going to avoid any of the negative, any of the downside, because they don't want you to second guess it and leave the showroom without signing a contract. Remember, at the end of the day, the sales consultant represents the builder and is looking out for the builder's best interest. Here are some of the most common complaints I've seen that are out of the builder's control. First, people complain about delays. The reality is, construction delays just happen. It's a part of the construction industry, whether it be building a freeway or widening a road, commercial buildings, or just down to your house. It's almost impossible for builders to be able to finish on time. There's just too many variables and too many factors. Weather plays a major factor in that. You can't predict when you're going to have weather problems. And even if you put weather days in, you don't know how that's going to affect the total build out because you don't know when bad weather is going to hit. And that could cause a chain reaction of scheduling conflicts with all of the other trades that have to go right on top of each other. Sometimes there are delays with the permitting office at the city, and there's nothing the builder can do about that. Sometimes in a new community, you have the city that has been delayed on putting utilities in, and because of that, it affects the builder's timeline. There's just so many variables that you just have to expect that you're not going to finish at the completion date that you set out to. Another common complaint is price increases. This unfortunately does happen from time to time, especially if you're building a custom home. But even with production builders, sometimes they have clauses in their contract that allows for a price increase when you've got an increase in building materials. This happened a ton in 2021 and 2022 because you had all of the supply chain issues that were going on with everything in society. And that created not just delays in construction, but it also caused prices to rise on building materials. So the builders passed those costs on to the buyer. In some cases, it really made people mad because they just didn't want to pay more than what they agreed to. And in some cases, it actually pushed buyers above the threshold that they could afford to buy at, and they had to walk away from the deal. Now, how much of that was really because of price increase and how much of that was because the builder knew if a buyer walked away at an old price, they could sell it to a new person at the new price and make more money? I don't really have an answer to that, and that's a different story. Another complaint that I see often is the buyer's access to the home. One of the things I hear so often from people is they are so excited to watch every step of their house being complete. They want to be there for the pouring of the foundation and the framing and all those things because it's just a fun experience. Unfortunately, builders rarely let you go to the job site except in specific cases. It's not that they're trying to wreck your fun, it's that they have liability issues with their insurance because job sites are dangerous. There's a reason that hard hats are a thing. The builder doesn't want to open themselves up to lawsuits, and they also don't want to hurt the potential buyers. If a buyer were to go onto the property and a beam fell on their head and killed them dead, well, the builder then would know that that person's not buying their house anymore. Of course, they're also going to be sad for the dead person, I'm imagining. Now, as much as I would love to tell you all the negative experiences that I've had and which builders those were, it's not my goal in this video to disparage any particular company. Plus, really, I don't want you to just...
Trust me, bro.
Right? I want you to know as much as you can about this builder who you're going to be working with. It's going to be building your dream home. So in the timeless words of internet strangers arguing with other internet strangers,
do your own research.
If you have any specific questions about this process or really anything related to real estate in the Conroe or greater Houston area, be happy to answer any questions that you have. Just pick up the phone, give me a call, send me an email or a text, and I'll answer any questions that you have. I'm a relocation specialist. I've helped people from all over the nation become future Texans. Also, because you're watching a video on how to avoid the wrong builder, you may want to check out this video on how to choose the right one.